Chat, hello. We're live. This is a Seahawks podcast where we're going to react to organized team activities that we have possibly observed while we're in the fourth quarter of game one of the Western Conference Finals. So appreciate you spending your time with us, especially given we as a collective are late. Now, we had a very good reason for that. So, keep it nice. Don't make me get the ban hammer out or the timeout hammer. Griff, do you have a preamble topic that you want to get to the listener, or do you want to just get into it?
No, I do.
Okay,
first
good.
of all,
Fantastic.
Matty, have you done your homework? You've been assigned. You've been assigned the reading.
Yeah, my
or the
dog.
viewing.
My dog ate the viewing.
Did you? Because you're grinding that film, huh? You're not doing your homework because you're watching film again, aren't you? You need
Why
to watch.
are you talking to me like I'm one of your dogs?
You need to watch Children of Men, and then you need to watch Master and Commander.
Okay.
But
I've been cutting up Tyrese Knight film and then trying to coach.
So I was right.
Yeah.
Get your priorities straight, please. Do you guys?
Wow, this glass looks so dirty in this light. I'm sure it's not that dirty. I don't know why it looks that dirty. Anyway.
Sorry, we're all judging you. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
You guys eat pancakes over there, right? And waffles.
Well, we eat crepes.
Okay. All right. I'm sure you eat crepes, but do you also eat pancakes? Like, can you go to a restaurant and get pancakes and waffles?
What, like any old restaurant?
You go to a breakfast joint.
Well, first of all, pal, breakfast joint isn't a thing.
Is that really only American?
Well, there used to be something called Little Chef, which would be on like motorway service stations, or as you'd say, highway.
Sure.
And you'd stop there and get like a full English, but that went bankrupt. So,
is there really no establishment where you can't walk in and get a petit déjeuner, some like waffles, pancakes? Does that really not exist over there?
Well, second of all, a petit déjeuner, I don't think in the continental sense, that would be a croissant and orange juice, and a black coffee. But in terms of pancakes and waffles, yes, the American culture has taken over a bit, but like you'd have to go to like a bougie. That would be a very much a gentrified area doing it.
Well, you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from that downtown London, I'm sure, right?
Of course, yeah.
All right, so
you're not getting Denny's.
Oh no, I know, but you're getting like some fancy with like powdered sugar on it or whatever.
Yeah, but it's probably like 30 quid,
Yeah, like way too. Yeah. Do you ever eat pancakes or waffles at home? Do you ever make them?
It's funny you asked that actually, because I was gonna do like it start a tradition of cooking the special person in my life breakfast every Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Now I started off great, and then the second week I didn't do it. So this Saturday, but that second week, why I say it's funny you asked is I was planning to do pancakes.
Okay.
But I didn't. So maybe this Saturday I could.
Have you? All right. So I'm trying to establish a premise here. Have you ever consumed pancakes or waffles before?
I know where you're going with this. Yes, I have. Yeah. Well, hang on. Not at the same time. That's insane.
No, I'm not saying at the same time.
Well, you are. You're saying pancakes and waffles.
And all right, what do you put on there? Like butter and syrup, right?
Yeah, although yeah.
Okay.
I've been to America before.
Okay, I'm speaking like I'm being very familiar with it. I'm assuming you have. I just didn't.
When I went to the Senior Bowl the first time, I stayed downtown in a nice place, like a nice Airbnb, and then I sort of because I was flying out to Alabama via a transfer at Atlanta, massive journey time for me and cost.
Yeah.
I decided to spend a bit more time there, have a couple of days like exploring downtown Mobile, and I walked to the police station, and next to the police station was this it was like a diner, but like a kind of like a, I don't know what you'd call it, like a downtown style diner, which all the cops ate at.
Okay.
And that was really nice. And do you know what I had there?
Waffles.
No, pancakes with
Pancake.
bacon.
Yeah. And did you like the bacon? Do you like American bacon?
Yeah, so we'd call that streaky bacon.
Streaky bacon. Okay. Right. I remember you telling me this. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's Canadian bacon, right? And then we
Right.
have a combination of two, which is back bacon.
Right. And then you guys also
Will, I've been to Waffle House.
Okay, so
Also,
all I was trying
the best thing in Mobile was well, not the best thing, but the most American thing, so much so that it's like a caricature, it's a burger, but the buns are donuts.
yeah, no, that's an Americanism I personally cannot indulge in.
Yeah, no, that was weird.
And I have low standards, but like I can't go there.
No, I ate it, but
I could eat them separately at the same time. Like I'm gonna eat a burger, I'm gonna eat a donut. I could do that, but I couldn't do. All I'm trying to get at here though is the common way to consume these items is with butter and syrup. But have you ever done peanut butter and syrup? Have you ever tried that before?
wow,
It's really good.
That was worth asking.
Well, I invested all this time in setting it up because I didn't just want to assume that you consume pancakes and waffles like I would. I was trying to dispense for my American.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you. In fact, I have crepes with lemon, sugar, and butter. So
you should try it with peanut butter and syrup sometime. It's very good. Peanut butter and maple syrup are a great combination. I assume that was a common thing, like a common alternative to regular butter.
Right.
And I mentioned it to someone one day, and he looked at me like I was insane. I'm like, surely it's not that irregular. Anyway,
okay,
Taylor, it's very good.
Peanut butter with things is quite common.
Yeah. It's totally like there's no clash there. Buckwheat waffles with like really grainy buckwheat waffles.
Oh yeah, buckwheat. I can
maple syrup, some chocolate chips, maybe some whipped cream. You know, squirty cream. Sorry,
trying to get me big.
Hey man, we need linebackers, bro.
I can play fullback. Got natural pad level.
Well, you've played safety.
Played.
You have.
Yeah, that's true. People forget that.
Don't take that from yourself.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know why that was such a big deal for you to ask me about the peanut butter. I went through a stage. I went through a stage of making like grilled peanut butter and bacon and jelly, or what I'd say jam, confiture, sandwich, fried, in bacon fat.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and then I realized it was during lockdown. Lockdown was a whole thing for me. I had that, and then
it was a whole thing
for a lot
of people.
It was. We went through that, and then I'd finish the day with like I watched The Big Lebowski for the first time. So like many people would have like a White Russian, but a White Russian I had like a pint of it because I couldn't be bothered to make multiple ones, so I just make a big pint glass of it. Yeah, so that was not a very healthy diet.
Yeah, this sounds like a fun one.
Yeah, just a lot of fat, really, and sweetness. Yeah, I kind of ruined my palate for a bit. But now into the clean eating of buckwheat waffles with peanut butter.
Yeah, no, you should do it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll take your word to it. The worst thing about NBA games? How when they're just getting good, there's loads of like challenges, timeouts, officiating timeouts, and all of the kind of build up of tension just gets like completely nuked.
Toward the end. There's no way around that too.
Right.
It's rough.
Right, unless you just took timeouts and challenges off people and just said, "Hey, it's backyard rules,"
Mm-hmm.
We're just gonna get ultra physical.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it kind of sucks. That actually is why soccer is such a great sport. But anyway,
because they just let it ride.
Yeah, well, until VAR became a thing. But yeah, it's so free flowing.
Yeah, right, for sure. So I noticed that you mentioned you watched a movie called The Big Lebowski. So don't tell me you don't have time in your day.
That was in lockdown. I don't know what part of.
Do we need to start another pandemic for you to watch Children of Men to watch.
Well, isn't it about a pandemic? No spoilers.
No, it's not a transmittable disease. It's people like humans became infertile. Was the premise of it.
Wow.
It doesn't specify which sex it was either.
Oh dear.
It's just that, people weren't getting pregnant for whatever reason.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great film to watch.
Yep. It's dreary, but it has a good ending, and it's a very well made film.
So I should just skip to the ending.
Well, it's about the journey, Matty, the destination.
Oh, I see. Right. Should we do this Seahawks podcast?
Hit it, Matty.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where the Seahawks have had their second organized team activity of the 2024 offseason. This was the first OTA of the 10, which was open to reporters. Seattle had one previously. I believe that was on Monday, but this Wednesday one was open to the reporters. And so what that also means is we have press conferences from Mike Macdonald, Geno Smith, and safety Rayshawn Jenkins, which, yeah, you best believe it. We're going to overanalyze that. This is phase 3 of the NFL's off-season workout program. So while live contact is prohibited, teams can now do offense versus defense periods like 7-on-7, 11-on-11, all sorts of stuff like that, but still no contact. Before that, a piece of Seahawks-related news. Pro Bowl safety Jamal Adams visiting with the Baltimore Ravens happened yesterday on Tuesday, the 21st of May, per Adam Schefter. Griff, any reaction to that? Interesting that a Ravens tree, Mike Macdonald presumed scheme is interested in a player like that.
Shouldn't be too surprising. Yeah, I mean, he played big nickel last year, and he has a safety background. That's what Kyle Hamilton does. There's some overlap there. And he definitely fits any scheme if you're looking for a dime linebacker, right? Excuse me. So, yeah, and they're just looking to see what's there, right? I hope that Seattle doesn't close the door on that, because they could actually use him, given their situation at the second level of the defense, the linebacker nickel spot. So, yeah, but yeah, there's some commentary there. I mean, is the idea, well, is he a scheme fit? I mean, this should signal that, yes, he very much is a scheme fit, if we're just talking stylistically, right?
Right. Yeah, and someone who I think would definitely fit in Seattle, as you've said. You could play him big nickel on early downs, and then on the later downs, you can use him more like a weak side linebacker in dime and pressure and blitz and do all that good stuff too. So it's really the financials and also whether he looks right. And the fact he didn't sign with Baltimore, he's obviously probably, testing. He's probably going to visit other teams, but perhaps they didn't even offer him. We do not know. Just getting the financials to a point where he would be comfortable playing again, I think is going to be a tough one for any team, because he was the highest paid safety at one point, and now I don't know what he's going to be able to command on this type of market. So remember, Justin Simmons still out there for safeties, and he'd presumably be very different players in some respects, although both can play a quarter in a very nice way. But presumably Justin Simmons is the guy who can get the most right now. Right.
Yeah, and it's strange that he hasn't. I mean, he's still a top 5 safety in the sport. So, I mean, he had a great year last year for Denver. So that is surprising to me that no team seems to want him. Makes me think that he's in control of his destiny right now. Because, I mean,
he's
it's not
probably
like
I don't need to do these OTA stuff.
It's not like he's 33 and you have to convince people he can still play like he's 30. He's not. Yeah, he still has some solid years left here.
Yeah.
He'll be 31 in November, but dude's 30. He's not ancient for a football player.
Yeah. Well, so OTAs, and I've realized I've already made a mistake, I think, because I think Seattle's had 2 before today. I think they had one Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday. And the main storyline coming out of OTAs is the injuries already a thing on both sides of the football. So right tackle Abraham Lucas, obviously he's been dealing with a sore knee. He underwent a procedure to get that fixed after it impacted his playing time in 2023. And he's still rehabilitating from that surgery. McDonald's saying it's hard to tell when he'll be back. We're shooting for camp right now. He's getting after it in rehab, so I'm proud of his effort he's putting in. But he's not going to be participating in OTAs, which we should say also are purely voluntary at this point. But Lucas still working his way back. Also, right guard Anthony Bradford, who ended up as the starter last year, the rookie 4th-round pick then. He's in his second year now, but he tweaked his ankle on Tuesday. McDonald said he shouldn't be out for long, but he did miss today in OTAs. That meant that the starting offensive line in OTAs was from left to right: left tackle Charles Cross, left guard Laken Tomlinson, centre Olu Oluwatimi, right guard McClendon Curtis, somewhat of a forgotten man there, and then right tackle George Fant. They took all of the number 1 reps in 11 on 11 from what Bob Condotta of the Seattle Times could tell. The second string was left to right: Raekwon O'Neal, Tremaine Ankrum, Nick Harris, Christian Haynes, Michael Jarrell. Griff, anything you want to add on that?
I think Haynes will. I mean, they want him to earn his keep, right? So they're not just going to hand it to him. So
right, he's a rookie as well, so
yeah,
you can't just throw him in, and
right.
It just doesn't work like that.
So hopefully he's distinguishing himself on the second string like very quickly against other second string defensive linemen, and hopefully he starts to pop. I mean, Laken Tomlinson is a seasoned vet. He was once a solid player. He doesn't have the athleticism as much anymore, the power anymore, but like he's still a competent player, right? And then Bradford, I mean, he's got NFL snaps under his belt, and he had some games where he did run block well, so it's not like he's not working with anything. So they're not like complete total pushovers. So when Haynes eventually starts working with the ones, that won't just be like a nothing accomplishment. It'll be like, oh yeah, he's clawing his way up. So
yeah, and right guard's one of those positions where there's so many unknowns compared to last year, where you presumably had a starting line. Obviously, it didn't transpire that way with the injuries, but you had Damian Lewis on the left side, you had Phil Haynes on the right side, and going in, you're like, oh, there's some continuity there. Okay, new center again in Evan Brown, but you had continuity at both guard spots, and you had second-year tackles, and you were like, oh, this line's going to be good. And obviously, the results panned out very much disappointingly, along with the injuries at both tackle spots impacting them. But Geno being the 6th most pressured quarterback, over 40% of dropbacks. And, you look at the guys ahead of him, and they're not the pocket passing quarterbacks like Geno is. They're kind of getting pressure on themselves with their play style, whereas Geno, as evidenced by how often he was sacked relative to the pressures, was not doing that. He was playing pretty good for that. Maybe this year is kind of the opposite in that, right, in a sense, in that the sure, there's a lot of question marks, and on paper this line looks like it could be terrible, but you just don't know. It could turn out a bit better. Terrible's a bit strong, but the guard spots are shaky. They're they could fall off a cliff in a way, but they could also be okay. So we'll have to see if Schneider's got it right. Geno Smith, when he's speaking, he's been a good soldier. He's not going to say anything out of turn about that. Yeah. Now, I said there was other injuries on the other side of the football. So, Tyrell Dodson, or T-Dot, as Mike Macdonald called him, which, where are you at with T-Dot as a name, Griff?
If he's cool with it, so be it.
Sure. So he's out there but limited, and Bake, which is Jerome Baker, is in-house, but he's rehabbing right now, said Mike Macdonald. So what that meant, obviously the two guys Seattle signed to be their Mike and Will linebacker heading into the season as their starters after Cody Barton, he's not been there for a while. After Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks left in free agency, not playing. So that meant Seattle's starting inside linebackers were John Rattigan at the Mike spot and Patrick O'Connell at Will, along with Tyrese Knight working in, appearing to split time, according to Bob Condotta of the Seattle Times. Griff,
Yeah.
how are you doing?
Well, I'm coping, Matty. I'm coping.
Oh, how are you coping with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing that we don't already know, other than they've got these nagging injuries, so they'll get healed up and then they'll get in there. I don't think we have any reason to think it'll be recurring. So, it's kind of status quo at linebacker. It's just it's one of those situations. I mean, no team feels good about their depth, but it's one of those situations where I don't feel great about this first string. I also don't feel. I feel particularly not as great or particularly bad about the second string as well. Like, again, like I said, no one feels good about their second string, but sometimes you feel better about your depth than other times. We know how we feel about Tyrese Knight. Looking forward to be proven wrong. I think O'Connell has a heartbeat, and I think he has real deal linebacker skills, but the ceiling is limited there still. So, yeah, I'm going to keep saying this. I really think that. I think Baker's a solid player. Dodson is solid for what he is. What he is not very valuable, though, in the grand scheme. I really think John Schneider is going to be working the phones, and he's going to lift it. What's that phrase? Leave no stone unturned. That linebacker. The Leonard Williams trade. They also tried to trade for Jonathan Allen, like he was their number one choice last year, but they were working the phones like last May for a defensive tackle, and it took all the way up to the trade deadline for things to materialize. So he's going to be monitoring situations around the league, but it's tough because, Matty, we were talking about this before we went live. There were a handful of like Goldilocks situations at defensive tackle. Like, okay, trading for that guy makes sense cap wise. And
yeah, we were talking about like a number of different moves to the point that Leonard Williams didn't feel like the most obvious one. I mean, for ages it was I think I'm going to get the wrong name here. It was DeForest Buckner, right?
It was Buckner. It was Allen. We even talked about Grady Jarrett, where it made sense cap-wise, and it also made sense for the other team being willing to part with him. And like even Schneider himself said, like we were talking to New York back in August about Leonard Williams.
Right, and the flagship radio station, Seattle Sports, was it was a topic on their show multiple times.
Yeah, like why did they keep talking about it? So they're not talking about linebackers right now, but we do know it's actually been reported that Seattle did call the Jaguars about Devin Lloyd very, very early on in free agency. I don't think they would go for full circle on that because Lloyd is very similar to Baker skill set wise. There'd be some redundancy there. I feel like they'd have to go after a more true Mike archetype. But it's hard to find that player where it makes sense for them cap-wise and it makes sense for the team that would part with him. Draft capital-wise, they can totally make that work. They can give up 2025 cap, a third-round pick for a guy if they want. The only thing I could see is if they could find a team that also needed D-line help, and the cap numbers could basically be neutral. No one gains cap, no one loses cap if they were willing to depart with Draymond Jones, because he's a sunk cost regardless. So you might as well turn the money you're spending on him into a player that fits the context of your roster more, which would be an off-ball linebacker. And you need to find a team that also needs that. A team that makes sense there is honestly the Jets. Robert Saleh lost D-line depth. Draymond Jones totally fits Robert Saleh's MO in terms of that versatile, gap-flexible guy that can rush various gaps. And he's got a young linebacker that's good, Quincy Williams, and they got an old linebacker that's good, CJ Mosley. From his perspective, you'd be getting rid of an old player that you're going to get rid of eventually soon anyway in CJ Mosley, and then you're gaining a good guy you'd need in Draymond Jones. From Seattle's perspective, it's, well, we're spending this money on Jones anyway. We might as well turn him into CJ Mosley. Still has a year or two left. I don't know. Matty, what do you think?
That's a very interesting way of coping. I mean, we spoke about the Bills as well, right? Like the Bills could do with some pass rush juice. Could you take one of that, like their actual good linebacker?
Matt Milano coming off an ACL tear, does that drive his value down? Are they not enthused about his long term? Do they foresee a regression, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, so that's an option. Anyway, right now, we liked
Jordan
Patrick
Brooks to
O'Connell.
Miami. Does Miami need D-line help? I'm joking.
We liked Patrick O'Connell in the preseason of 2022. Or was it 3?
Yeah. No.
I
I
don't
think
think he did.
it was last year. It was last August, right?
Maybe. Anyway, he did some things. He looked like a linebacker, but as you said, he's got his limitations. Like, we're talking about an undrafted free agent for a reason. And he's a Will. He's not really. Well, he might be a Mike, but he's playing Will right now. Like, the Will's Rattigan. So okay. So we'll have to see how that all works. Yeah. Other injuries. Tight end AJ Barner still not participating. He had a hamstring issue. I think he picked that up in rookie camp. And then safety Jarek Reed obviously underwent ACL surgery last year. They're clearly taking that cautious. He was a spectator at practice, as per Brady Henderson of ESPN. Henderson also didn't see on the field DK Metcalf, Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed, Stone Forsythe, Jonathan Hankins. I mean, a lot of those guys are kind of established vets. I would suggest for Stone Forsythe, that's slightly disappointing, even though OTAs are voluntary. People have stuff on, obviously. But, Forsythe is slightly under pressure. Seems third year now.
Yeah.
There's more offensive linemen coming in. Like, is he still that backup left tackle with Fant here and Lucas comes back? Like, there's a way that he gets under a bit more pressure. Anyway, I don't want to read into it too much. And yes, it's a voluntary thing.
Nice.
I am struggling. I've got ill. This is what happens when we wait to go on the...
My fault. Is it allergies or are you under the weather?
I think I'm under the weather. Very serious.
No. Oh,
okay, so press conference quotes. So we heard from the head coach of the Seahawks, Mike Macdonald. We heard from the quarterback of the Seahawks, Geno Smith. And we heard from the safety free agent signing of the Seahawks, Rayshawn Jenkins. Griff, anything stand out to you here, or do you just want me to take us in a direction?
Matty, lead us in a new direction. The ball is in your court.
Fantastic. Right, so we heard from Macdonald first, obviously about the injuries, as I've said. He's playing music now in practice. That's brilliant. Love that for him.
Love it.
And it's slightly louder.
I'm so excited he's playing music at practice.
So am I. He also, Griff spoke about them wearing game jerseys, and look at us. Aren't we? I mean, we literally said this. He said, the thinking behind it is we're trying to make practice as much like a game as possible. So how we dress, all the details, where we stand, how we operate, how we coach them up timing-wise. Like, we want the guys feeling like they're out there playing, so that's kind of part of the equation. I mean, chat, you don't even need to watch that press conference. You just need to watch or listen to Seattle Overload, because that was our take.
Right.
Pat yourself on the back.
Oh, I am.
Oh, chat can't see it. Anyway. Macdonald also spoke about... Have I not even put it on here? Oh my gosh. I'm so disappointed.
Oh no.
I might be able to add it, but this is risky because it might not be the right one. Oh gosh. I'll just read out his quote on Geno Smith while you look at the Sam Howell quote. Sorry about this, chat. So, obviously a lot was made about Geno Smith's the way that Geno Smith was being talked about. So Macdonald was asked about whether, having been around Geno Smith a lot this offseason for like a couple of months, whether, his impressions were now, basically. And Macdonald responded, highly competitive. I love how Geno works. We're pushing him to take the next step as a football player and as a leader. And I think he's answering the call. So really excited about Geno up to this point and getting to know him, but just really such a respect for how hard this man works at his craft. Griff, nothing really from that, but yeah. I think the Sam Howell factor to this, where, this is what Macdonald said about how he's coming along fine and he's only practiced 2, but he's slinging it. And then what Geno Smith said about Sam Howell, which is not in there. This is shambles. But Geno basically described how they'd been on holiday together and how Sam's a really, really talented player and he's played a lot of football. That's an underrated factor to me about Geno. And I think we mentioned it when they acquired Sam Howell. Geno's been in a lot of different franchises, on a lot of different teams, a lot of different environments, and he's seen a lot of football. He's into his 12th year now, isn't it? He will be able to mentor and help Sam Howell if Sam Howell is receptive to that. And the fact that they've been to Cabo together, played some golf, developed our relationship, that's a good thing for Howell's career development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what he needs after such a rough, 21 pick season last year, coming out of UNC, where that type of offense is nowhere near like what an NFL offense is. That's Geno's thing.
Right. How I mean, there needs to be no pressure placed on Sam Howell. He just needs to be able to be a backup, let him develop, let him be coached. He has traits, and some of those traits are forming there's a difference between having traits and having skills. He has a skill set, but I think mostly he should just be viewed as a guy that has traits, and then those traits combined coalesce to form a skill set. But I just don't think that skill set is fully fleshed out yet. He just needs time and be viewed as a young developmental player. So,
yeah. And as Brendan points out in the chat after complimenting my drop shadow, thank you, Brendan. 15 of the offensive guys went to Cabo per Geno Smith. So that's interesting. This is the type of stuff that I imagine happens every year. And it's the same thing when the reporters are asking about Mike Macdonald's install, where this is Macdonald's response on his defensive install was, it's a challenge right now. We're still going to be installing defensively throughout. Install 2 is today. We'll evaluate it as we go. So if a guy is slow to make some checks today, anticipating things, we'll make some decisions so it doesn't pile on, so we don't get too far behind. Not really worried about the pace of how fast we get everything in. We want a really good foundation for when we get into camp. So we have a schedule, but we'll adjust as we go. And he said how today was install 2, so they're 20% roughly through their install. But it seemed like the beat reporters kind of cottoned on to that being almost a big deal. That they were installing slow. And yeah, it is, year one of an entirely new defensive system, albeit with some similarities, just different terminology, right? And different checks and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel if you asked people every year what point of the install you're at, it would be very, very similar for every team across the league.
Yeah.
It takes them time to do this stuff. And this is what OTAs are for, is going through the system like this. So exactly. I don't know. Is there anything you take away from that? Is that surprising at all?
It all sounds pretty standard to me. And him emphasizing we want a really good foundation for when we get into camp. That's probably when they're dialing things up more,
Right, exactly. Okay, well, I'm glad you agree there. Macdonald also spoke about the secondary and the corners. Well, the question was about corners, but it's interesting to me how he took it towards the secondary. So he said, we're really excited about our secondary, and I think there is some flexibility there. We can get some personnel groups for guys moving around, play match-up ball a little bit. They're in a good spot. Again, we'll see, blah, blah, blah. Now, the match-up ball thing is an interesting point, especially when he was asked about Rayshawn Jenkins in particular, and Macdonald, praised how he's going to be a leader and the stuff they anticipate off the tape and how he's very, very talented. And then he mentioned he's a guy we can play matchup with. So this kind of matchup thing was a bit of a theme to to the stuff, and there was also talk about different personnel packages as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find that. Oh yeah, right here it says we can get some personnel groups for guys moving around. So we don't know what this defense is going to look like exactly, but just looking at the safety group and how kind of interchangeable they are and flexible, and Macdonald saying about Jenkins, how he can do all the things we ask from a safety in our system. I think they probably view Love in a similar way, and they're all going to do a bit of everything.
Right.
And it's kind of how, I just want to see how that all plays out.
Right. Well,
how they play different offenses, right? That's what matching up is.
They're clearly training the safeties to be interchangeable, to be versatile. And we have expressed concerns that maybe it's more redundant than interchangeable, because those are both on the flip side of the same coin. It can be easy to conflate the two or mistake one for the other. Both Jenkins and Love feel like kind of seam boundary type players, like the weak side safety in a two deep shell. Like, who's going to play to the field? Who are you going to more frequently task with range? That's something we're going to have to see figured out. Will either of them mix in and play nickel with Devin? Something we'll just have to see. It could be very precise and like Macdonald said, game plan specific, matchup specific. So I don't know. We'll find out. You're muted.
Thank you. Interesting as well. Brendan in the chat saying about the install thing. 20% seems good on 2 to 3 days of OTAs. Well, yeah, I just need to kind of fully explain that point about the installs. Generally, if you're installing something in the NFL, my understanding of that is you have install 1, and the idea is that you get that all installed in 1 day. If Seattle, I don't know if this is the second or the third OTA, but anyway, for Macdonald to say they're 20% of the way through after the second install, that correlates if they've got 10 OTA days, 10 installs, 100%. You see what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm.
It's to be expected. Like, they're on track, and that's the same as it would be across the league. Like, generally, an install is designed to be done in a day. And if you look at Dan Orlovsky tweeting out his, I think it's the Texans playbook when he was with Shanahan, and what, it's just how offenses, defense do it. It's how it's done in the NFL. So I think Monjumbo, I think it can be that on the nose that they're on day 2 of 10. Like, then they probably haven't got to a stage where they're like, hang on a second, we haven't installed that very well, or we're struggling with that. We need to spend an extra day on that thing. Didn't sound like they'd got to that point. So, anyway. Right. So on the coordinators, I just found it interesting that Macdonald was saying about Adam Dirty, and he's really excited about him, the connection he's been able to make with the defense, how he orchestrates the front. We've been able to bounce a lot of ideas off one another. That's been really fun. Again, to me, obviously, of Seattle's D-line talent as well, and the depth that they have on the interior, but even the exterior, there's a bit of a kind of log jam of development guys where it's going to be really interesting to see how, for instance, Derek Hall takes the leap. If Boye Mafe can become the best edge rusher on the team, if Darrell Taylor can earn another contract, there's so many storylines there. I'm so fascinated of how similar this is to the Raven system, to what they kind of take from Dirty's background in the Dan Quinn style stuff, and obviously that has links to Pete Carroll, and maybe they've run a few more like pure bare fronts. Maybe that expands the nickel, but yeah, I really want to see how that plays out.
Right. Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind in the back pocket, like you said there, with regard to the bare front and such, and more so being able to match it with nickel, like you said. So that would be a pretty major divergence for Macdonald. If that were to happen, that would definitely be Dirty influence. That would also imply that Macdonald's open to some tweaks, right? Which would be pretty good information in and of itself.
Right. And then Ryan Grubb, he mentions how he's a really detail-oriented guy, very precise, and mentions he's a very clear communicator, which is obviously similar to what we hear about Macdonald. So, finally, that's not what I wanted. Well, I don't have it, but instead, Macdonald spoke about Devon Witherspoon, and he was asked about him and what he likes about him, but he mentioned how he picks things up really quick, but just understands ball and plays at a really, really fast speed. And then he said, at nickel, there is a lot of action in there. And so when guys have that type of skill set, you can get them right around the action as much as possible. He'll do all the things. He'll blitz, man, zone, play deep in the field. So it's a fun position to play. He didn't need to say that he's a nickel. It's obvious that Witherspoon played some nickel last year and that would continue. But just additional confirmation that he's going to play some nickel, and with the personnel groupings and playing matchup ball like they mentioned, I wonder who else could slot in at nickel if Witherspoon moves out there and moves in there. But I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, it's good to know that they are keeping him in there. I mean, that was we could have hazarded the guess that he was definitely going to still keep playing nickel. But it's just nice to get that confirmation. So when we talk about the Kyle Hamilton rule, the Kyle Hamilton rule is only a phrase that we use because Kyle Hamilton exists. It's like only Kyle Hamilton plays the Kyle Hamilton rule. What the Kyle Hamilton rule is well, in base, he's a safety, and in nickel, he's one of the nickels of like 3 nickels they had. So Witherspoon can provide some of the nickel play that he did, and then you can recreate Hamilton's safety play among the safeties that you have. Obviously not to the same level, but because Kyle Hamilton's one of the best safeties in the game. But the role is covered. It's just Witherspoon can't play nickel all the time. So you want another body, another guy in there. And I am very curious to see who that, of the current players on the team, who that guy will be, or maybe guys. I mean, Kobe Bryant is kind of an obvious choice just because he's played nickel before. He doesn't bring a lot of size there, but he's literally played the spot. So it's not like he wouldn't be a fish out of water. We'll just have to wait and see.
Kayvon Wallace kind of did it with the Titans.
Yeah. I don't know if he can.
James looks like a pure nickel corner.
And not like an early down zone type nickel, right? Like a pure man up.
Yeah. I mean, he might be able to learn the zone stuff. Like he has the movement for it, but yeah, he's more the man type.
The one of the litmus test though, if can this guy play early down nickel, is that you're in the run fit in this scheme. Like you have to pretty much fit like a safety would, like a box safety.
Right. And the reason for moving Spoon out there and out the slot is because you maybe need a bit more of not that he can't do it, but you need like a bigger size to bring you that run defense.
Right. And you worry about, even though Spoon can do it, like you worry about his longevity doing it. I mean, he's a $180 and he plays like he's 200, 210, which is awesome. But like, can he hold up the rigors of that? So you have to, that's why Jamal that's why Jamal played big nickel last year. Like that's why they interchanged him there. So I don't know. Majambo makes a good point. Artie Burns did do it last year. I thought he was really rough in the Steelers and Titans game personally. I do think
he looked good in the. Did he have a good preseason game there?
It was the Panthers game where he looked all right doing it.
As a nickel, yeah, he's still on the roster. He's right on the edge, but he's still on the roster. Yeah.
Yeah, he might. If Majambo could be right, it could be him.
And that's the cool thing right now. Firstly, just the nickel position kind of brings me on to the point that I kind of like how, rather than like when Dan Quinn, for instance, went to the Falcons and drafted Keanu Neal and was like, "You are Cam Chancellor." And okay, there were some differences in how they're used, and Keanu Neal, when he entered the league, actually looked pretty damn good and then kept getting hurt, and that defense fell off for a number of reasons. But rather than Macdonald going, "Oh God, we need like a Kyle Hamilton replacement," which sounds stupid, right? But it would be easy to try and get into that thinking. He's got pretty different personnel in Seattle right now to what he had in Baltimore. So what his end product looks like in Seattle, along with being surrounded by entirely different coaches other than his ILB coach, who I'm blanking on the name of, but played under him, linebacker with the Ravens. It's going to be you'd think more kind of an organic thing, which is this 2024 Seattle defense, not trying to totally duplicate what they did in Baltimore. Obviously, they'll take bits and bobs, but yeah, really intrigued by that. And then I don't know where I was going with the rest of that. Oh yeah, and then also the fact that there's no clear standout guy at nickel, but even at safety, like there's no clear standout guy. But other than Spoon, it wouldn't surprise me if any of the other guys were starters beside him.
Right.
Like I could make an argument for Mike Jackson, could make an argument for Trey Brown. I could see DJ James taking a job. Like I could see Kayvon Wallace beating out Rayshawn Jenkins. Like, it's not impossible. It would be a surprise, but it's not impossible. There's no like highly paid or premium draft pick who's like, oh, it's going to be awkward if we don't fit them in this. Like, well, you just take that guy's job or he'll take your job. So.
Right. Exactly. All options open. A true free for all right now in the back seven.
And I mean, inside backer is a bit more obvious in that they're the two vets who got signed in free agency to do the job. But in terms of they're not getting paid loads and they're injured right now. So, and there's some guys who've been on the team for a few years, and are really fighting for their NFL futures. So, So the whole really D-line's like, okay, there's almost too many people and some of them are highly valued assets, particularly on the interior. But everywhere else, I mean, outside backer, there's a competition to see who starts, but then the whole back seven is fierce, or back eight.
Right.
Okay, on that subject, actually, Uchenna Nwosu, Condotta saying he didn't look limited in any way. Of course, he's coming back from that torn pec that he had surgery on in October, so that's great news for Seattle. Their best edge rusher when healthy. And then let's transition to the offense. And Griff, we have some video. Are you ready for this? It's time to get excited.
Yep. I'm very excited.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Hold on. Let's just scrub that back a second.
Quarterback makes pass.
Oh, my gosh. Where's the defender?
He's wide open. That's a lot of separation.
McDonald's coverage not doing so good here.
They're doing drill work, right? But so it's a gun 3 drop. So a 3-step drop from gun is a 5-step concept, as the saying goes. So not quick game. It's an intermediate drop. He's crossing his feet. He's not shuffling, so it's going to probably be a. When what I'm saying is crossing his feet, that means it's like a true like progression, read it out. Whereas there are some 5-step drops or a 3-step drop from gun where they kind of just take one big initial step and then shuffle really quick to speed up the timing. This is a real deal 5-step concept, and Jackson Smith and Jigba is running a curl that breaks at like 14 yards. Seahawks ran a lot of curls last year. Curls are a big deal in the grab offense. It's not a horizontal and breaking offense. It's a very much a linear vertical offense that you access different depths via the vertically stemming routes sit down, which honestly is what the Seahawks were last year as well, in part because their protection didn't allow them to access the deep in breakers and such. But like what Waldron did last year was in part out of necessity, in part skill sets. Grubb would do similar things because that's what he would rather do, not because he kind of has to. But that was him in college. So we'll see how things change. Now, you can't really extract much from, drills on air, but
this is interesting just from the quarterback perspective, Griff.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Geno doesn't do the back pedal. He's immediately shuffle, crossover, set up. Whereas if you watch Sam Howell, and this is, again, the stuff he's going to learn, right? But notice he back pedals, shuffles, crosses over to set up. So there's a very different footwork there.
Yeah, and he is he's a shorter, right? So he has to gain the right depth because you want to gain about 3 yards.
Right. So that might be a built-in thing. Shorter strides, shorter legs. But yeah, interesting. Very interesting, eh? And this is here's throwing to the other. Oh no, looking off. He looked me off, Griff. He looked me off. How exciting!
Did you
That's
bite?
footage. I did. I took the cheese. So that's footage courtesy of Brady Henderson of ESPN. Griff, you have some interesting data here.
Do I?
Yeah. Can you?
Oh
see
yeah,
that?
is that me? Overzone. What does overzone Y mean?
No, we don't talk about that anymore.
An elegant weapon from a more civilized age is what that is. So gun 3 drop, 15-yard curl, whatever, stop, sit route, whatever you call it. Smith and Jigba caught 4 of 5 10-plus yard curl routes last year for 63 yards, good for 12.6 yards per target, ranking 6th in the NFL among receivers with at least 5 of such targets.
Did you chart that yourself?
No, I looked it up on Sports Info Solutions.
No that's weird. You didn't credit them.
Data per SIS. So I mean, JSN was effective on those. He got a lot of separation on them. Like when you drop your hips and you got to stop, he can stop on a dime. The corners couldn't. He caught like 2 against the Cardinals, 2 against the Cowboys. He had 1 against the Titans, I think. So as he's further up the progression and the targets are redistributed from the tight end room to the receivers more, I expect JSN to probably get around 110-ish targets and to be used downfield more because he'll just be replacing some of Colby and Disley's downfield targets. So, yeah.
So, Geno Smith spoke about the Seahawks offense and what it's going to look like with Ryan Grubb. Obviously, he started with the caveat about needing to get more reps in practice and actually go play the game. But kind of what we just saw there, in that it's a 5-step drop type of concept. It is if it was under center, but in the gun, it would be a 3-step drop, which we just saw. Geno said, overall, I feel like I'm a drop back passer, and I feel like this is a drop back offense, an offense that's going to spread the ball around, trust the quarterbacks to make the right decisions. That's pre and post snap. I think that's something that I'm really good at. Just want to make sure I'm doing the right things when it comes to that. And I'm so interested to see what the passing game looks like. We came in with Grubb thinking, maybe that doesn't work in the NFL. And then having watched more of it with the context of who Michael Penix was as a quarterback and also just the success they were having on the perimeter with the slot fades, that receiving group they had in Washington and the types of coverages they were getting, maybe actually there was a bit more that translates to the NFL. It just so happened that the stuff they were spamming, maybe you can't spam so much in the NFL, where, as Grubb himself acknowledged, there's less of a complete just mismatch in talent in the NFL. And it's more about leverage and spacing, moving guys. And that was a encouraging thing I thought he said, possibly on the radio. Can't quite remember. Forgive me for that. But Griff, drop back. Anything to say on this, or should we transition on to the next Geno Smith quote?
It's definitive confirmation of Grubb is a pass-heavy offense. The Seahawks are a pass-heavy offense. Geno's a pass-heavy QB because he can handle the volume, the checks, the breadth, the conceptual diversity. They're placing a lot on his shoulders as the quarterback. So,
do you think maybe Waldron? I know Geno started with training wheels on, and they kind of had to let him off that eventually. And there was the Carroll quote about that, and that was understandable, right? He kind of surprised them with how well he was doing early in his first year starting for the Seahawks. But in that second year, do you think Seattle was a drop back offense then? They kind of were a bit messy, and they couldn't really be a drop back offense with their pass protection at times, right?
Well, I would say drop back offense that they were pass heavy. I mean, they did pass a lot, but they the first half of 2023, they throttled it way down because they had to live with more quick game and less 5-step, 7-step drop offense.
Yeah, because that's what I take from the drop back. It's being a 5-step, 7-step and thinking about what Penix did in that system as well, it's like a lot of there's less, maybe less play action, more just structured dropbacks, less quick game, more just structured dropbacks. But obviously, you can only do so much of it.
Well, I will say there is a lot of quick game though in the Grub offense,
That's
and
true.
I mean, it's a good offense. It's obviously it was exactly what it needed to be, and that doesn't mean that he'll be that in the NFL. I mean, I don't know exactly how to phrase it. There's a lot of half field reads, right? But that's college. That's part of that's the college game.
Yeah, I don't know if they were half field reads. I just think they didn't need to get to the backside read.
They just didn't need to get to the backside. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they were half field.
I am curious to know what Grubb's meat and potatoes will be, because I do think there will be diminishing returns to run as much choice as he ran in college.
Griff for the listener, what is choice?
So choice is, if you think, usually ran from empty. If you think 3 receivers on one side, 2 receivers on the other, the weak slot receiver on the 2 receiver side, he's running what's called a choice route. So if the nearest defender has inside leverage, he's going to break to the outside. If he has outside leverage, he's going to break inside. It's going to look like a slant route. So it's either going to look like a quick out, even though it's not an out route. It's going to look like a quick out, or it can convert to what looks like a slant route, sort of. Or if the guy has face up coverage and he's like right in front of you, you can kind of jab step outside and almost run like a skinny post or a glance. And you can actually get to the second level on it. And then there are way more coaching details than that, but and then if that route isn't open, you have the receiver on the 2 receiver side, the outside receiver, he can run something paired with it, maybe a vertical, maybe a dig route, and it can kind of function as a high-low. If none of those guys are open, you can transition to the backside, and you typically have a stick nod concept on the backside. And you can Twitter search, put it in quotes, stick nod, and you'll find video examples of what that looks like. Usually with 3 receiver side, the number 3 receiver, so the innermost receiver, is going to run what looks like a stick route. He's going to fake to the outside at about 5 yards, and he's going to kind of run around the Mike linebacker and kind of run a seam route. The number 2 receiver will run a like what's called a return route. He's going to run what looks like a quick out and then break, kind of almost run like a 360 circle and then run back toward the middle of the field. And then the number 1 receiver, I think, is hitching. Or no, he's going vertical too. So on an alert. But anyway, so it's a concept that Grubb got a lot of mileage out of to complement the play action and the shot plays. But I just don't know if he had what he ran at UW, if there's enough conceptual diversity to copy that note for note in the NFL. That said,
well, I think his comment about there being less pure like mismatches in the NFL, I think that totally translates to him recognizing that like he understands that they're going to have to play around more of just like defender leverage, but what that looks like is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what he does. Like I've said this before, it's really important that they brought in Jake Peets from McVay's staff. He has play calling experience, but I think that's a way to kind of combine NFL realities with Grubb's philosophy and to kind of streamline that. Because obviously Pete's has so much experience with like 5-step and 7-step drop back game, full field progressions, what to tag on the backside of these, or what to attach rather on the backside of these plays. And then I think if that turns, and that's with Grubb applying those concepts and sequencing them and matchup to matchup, right, which he's really good at. I think the combination of those two things could end up looking something like Bruce Arians' Tom Brady offense, where Arians throttles down what he did with Carson Palmer, but still working out of the same framework and kind of principles. And it's a way to kind of still be a vertical, breathe fire type of offense, but you can complement it more with different ways to access the intermediate. So you can kind of have your move the chains, meat and potatoes stuff. And I think that would suit Seattle's personnel really well and suit Geno really well. So I'm curious to see
Right.
what Grubb does in the NFL. Very excited for that.
Right. Now, one thing he may well do, or is expected, is shift some motions. And obviously, that is, well, a very obvious thing to see play out on the field because, oh, that receiver moved pre snap. And wow, that's cool. Isn't that amazing? And wow, that guy shifted. Wow. I see something happening. Amazing. So he was asked about that. Geno Smith was. And he said, yeah, they are going to bring that over here. But then after being asked about how much more does it put on his plate with the shifts and the motions, maybe more so than what you've done in the last couple of years, Gino said, yeah, I mean, we're not going to shift and motion that much, but we're able to get out there and do some things. So I think, go ahead, Griff.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but I was going to say, like, now shifts and motion, they're kind of bucketed under the same concept, right? But
right, which is stupid.
Yeah, but like shifts and motion are two different things. I think it's true that Seattle didn't shift that much last year. Although maybe that even can be debated, but I don't know what the numbers are. Motion wise, if we're talking motion, Seattle used more motion than the Huskies did last year. It was
exactly.
So, I mean, if they're doing even less than what Grubb did last year, then that means doing even less than what the Seahawks did last year.
Yeah, which is why Geno's actually kind of, I mean, he hasn't defended last year, but he's kind of pumped the brakes on them being like more so than maybe what you've done in the last couple of years.
Right. Yeah. And it's important to, like, I don't know, people have every right to feel how they feel about Grubb. Grubb is awesome. I'm excited about him. But the criteria that is used to determine what makes a good OC and what isn't, based off the way things are discussed, the reality does not reflect Grubb being what people think he is, only based on the criteria. And I think we're kind of, it's easy to do this because the results are so great, but I think it's results-based analysis and the results are so good, we're making assumptions about the process that aren't true. So
yeah, it's like I said, if Grubb comes in and it stinks, people are gonna like, there either won't be too much talk about the motion, or they'll be like, "Oh, it's too cute and too fancy." It's just the way it goes. It's sort of
Matty, it's because Pete Carroll is meddling again. It's because Pete Carroll won't let Grubb go over the middle.
Yeah, that's right. One thing I do expect though is I'd be slightly disappointed if some of the creative shifts that Grubb used in college aren't, on display in the NFL, because he's talking about creating leverage advantages against defenders and how that's important in the NFL, creating like good room and good stuff for your concept. I think shifts are one way to really get that done in particular. Motions too, but like shifting, you can get better angles on stuff when you do that. Gino also saying, I think Coach Grubb has a great system, demands a lot from the quarterback pre and post snap, and he had a great way of identifying to give us some answers. The thing we have to do again is just be really disciplined with all our reads, reading our keys, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. Now, finally, and we haven't even got to Rayshawn Jenkins, Griff. We might have to skip his stuff out. He just said similar stuff to Grubb anyway. But Gino talked about his starting center. So, second year, Olu Oluwatimi, 5th round pick last year out of Michigan, played some action last year, took the first string reps at center per Bob Condota, and Gino is keen to praise him. He said how he thought Olu did a really good job, and I thought he was really, really prepared for a rookie. It was very impressive. Being this is his second year, we're both learning a new offense at the same time, so our communication has been great. We're talking things out, and I'm learning from him different O-line calls and things that they're adjusting at the line of scrimmage, as well as he's learning from me as far as what I'm seeing as the quarterback and kind of how I like things to be done. So it's an ongoing process. We're still early in that process. I think Olu has done a great job, tremendous job, and I think he's only going to continue to get better. I mean, he's going to gas his teammate up, Griff, but that's cool.
Well, we can use this as an opportunity to highlight the fact that Oluwatimi might be the X factor on the O-line. He could be the X factor for the whole offense and as an extension of that for the whole team. One way that this O-line gets better than what it feels right now is a young player making a huge stride, whereas with Lake and Tomlinson, we kind of know what he is. Well, we kind of know what Bradford is. Oluwatimi, though, if Oluwatimi has a great year, all of a sudden the O-line has potentially 4 pieces out of 5 that could be above average starters. And, that changes your fortune greatly. So he could be a positive multiplier. If he turns into something, even if he is an average center, that is a consistently average one, that would also pay dividends.
I think the thing I'm excited with him about is, you've had Austin Blythe, you've had Evan Brown, and they're smart, they can make the calls, they're vets, all that type of stuff, but ultimately they're small centers. Like, their size is going to bring you limitations. The fact
Right.
Olu's, is he 6'5"? Will be like 6'5", nearly 330 pounds, but he is a big center, and Seattle hasn't had that in quite some time. And so, in theory, that size gives you some power to displace people a bit more in the run game and not have speed to power ball rushes be your kind of weakness.
Not to fact check you, he's 6'3".
Well, that's basically, at a certain point, we're rounding that up. We're not rounding that down.
He's 6'5" online.
Right.
Yeah.
And anyway, you wouldn't want your center to be in 6'5", but my point being, he's not 6'1", like just 300 pounds.
Right.
So I'm intrigued to see how that all plays out.
Right.
The X factor of the offense. Wow. Look at you. That's a good punchline.
Bang.
Griff, anything else we need to cover?
I mean, are you going to watch Master and Commander anytime soon so we can talk about it? Like, come on. You'll enjoy it, Matty. It's a good film. It's a good film.
Chat, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow Griff on Twitter at CMike's Spin Move, follow me at Matty F Brown, follow the pod at Seattle Overload. Just share it with a friend. We're going to be doing these all through the off season. Tomorrow we're online doing DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett, watching their Senior Bowl stuff, and we also have some Auburn tape too. Probably watch a good game of theirs. Hopefully, see if they can go take some jobs. Can DJ James be the starting nickel in Seattle? Can Pritchett take Reek Woolen's job at right corner? We'll find out tomorrow evening. Please do join us live for that or watch the recap. We are also an audio podcast. 5-star reviews are much appreciated on your podcast platform. Griff, closing wisdom, and I don't want to hear about this shenanigans.
Closing wisdom. No.
Chat, thank you for the love. Good to see some usual names in here. Misfit, as I said, next tape breakdown tomorrow night. Griff, 6 p.m.?
Yeah, CU 6:37 Pacific Standard Time.